All right, we are back. This is the GoatCast podcast. This is August 13th. And we just want to thank everybody. We finally reached our goal 100 subs. And we just want to thank you guys for stopping by, hanging out with us, commenting, liking, all of the above. So we appreciate you guys getting us to our goal. The GOAT debate will be coming probably next week. I know we said at the 100 subscribers, but we weren't prepared. We got to get prepared because the SmackDown I'm gonna lay. It needs to be, I got to make it a formula. I got to formulaic it so that to take down BigNige. But anyways, back is BigNige. We missed you last week, so what's going on, BigNige?
Yeah, good to be back. Sorry about my leave of absence. Got into a little fender bender with a car accident, so had to make sure everything with that was squared away. Took my attention, but I definitely didn't miss out on the Olympics. But again, before we get into that, again, big thanks. We appreciate y'all support. The 100 subscribers is really good, but we're obviously looking toward the future. Just like the late great Kobe Bryant said, job's not done. We got a lot more work to do, a lot of great content to provide you guys. So we appreciate you guys rocking with us, and we hope you continue your support in our channel.
Yep. And there should be plenty more to come. Speaking of the Olympics, they finished up Sunday night, and both the men and women brought home gold. For the men, it seemed a little tough. Quarterfinals wasn't much of a game, but then we had the semifinals and the finals where we fought back against Serbia. Serbia was, it was a dogfight till the end. They were down 13 going into the fourth quarter, so that tells you all you need to know. And then, of course, we met France. France, being a shocker, they got past Canada and Germany, both favorites to make it out of their bracket. They were able to take down both, gave the U.S. all they can give them. France wasn't the most stacked team talent-wise when you look at the names, but they did play well together. They got down to 3 points late in the game when it was looking kind of dicey. We were turning the ball over. We were a little lackadaisical, but we got the job done. And what you got to say about Team USA 2024 team? What do you think about how they did this, how they put this together and got this gold medal?
Yeah, so it was a kind of nerve-wracking experience. I think this is the first time, at least in my, because I didn't really watch that much of the 2021 Olympics. Kind of watched a little bit. You actually were over, if you remember, for the gold medal game. You actually came through and we watched it a little bit. And it was the 2021 team wasn't really all that. Didn't have a lot of big names. Obviously, it had Kevin Durant, but outside of that, it was just kind of some diamond in the rough, some missing pieces like a Draymond Green, et cetera, et cetera. But this one was very interesting because of the matchup, like how they started the tournament play, beating South Sudan the way they did. We kind of thought that it would kind of trickle over into the next games, like they're coming in with that level of focus that I alluded to when we were breaking down how potential matchups would go after the little practice plays, little warm-up games that they were playing, little exhibition games. So we saw what they did with South Sudan. Then they go and play Serbia, and it was a complete, no show. In terms of you want to throw in coaching, you want to say certain players didn't show up. Not going to get into nitty gritty right here, but Serbia came to play, and we saw why Nikola Jokic is revered as the best player in basketball. I mean, he led the Olympics in almost every statistical category. And obviously, when he's on the floor, they're a complete nightmare. That game could have gone either way. I know they got into foul trouble as of late. I think he picked up his fourth, I think toward the end of the third quarter.
Yeah.
And I think another one of their bigger guys, he got in foul trouble as well. I think I forgot. I can't even pronounce his name, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. But no, that was a very good game from Serbia. They seem like they're poised for to be a thorn in Team USA's backside for the years to come. But the most interesting game to me was France, right? You
Mhm.
got Yabusele, Wimbenyama.
Mhm.
Look, I didn't see a lot of Nick Batum, which I was kind of interested with that because Nick Batum, I think, would have been a very good, kind of do it all kind of guy that would have been very good for a gold medal game. He's a
Yeah.
veteran. He's poised. He can do everything you need him to do on the floor. So I'm a little confused on why he wasn't in the game more. Um, but obviously, we know the show that Steph Curry put on in that game against France. I mean, when we talk about the Olympics, it's great for basketball fans to finally kind of just everybody, sitting together as one. We're not talking about how bad is the Lakers. What are the Warriors going to do? Kevin Durant over LeBron James, Steph Curry over LeBron James, or all these different things. We're sitting together as one, rooting for our teams and watching all these NBA players on the same team just dominating. And we saw Steph Curry deliver that in great fashion. We saw LeBron, with his little shoulder shrug, getting and ones. Team was loving it. We saw Kevin Durant doing the great things he was doing from mid range and three, just being an absolute sniper. But I mean, that man, Steph Curry, that he is a bad man. I mean, the way he closed out that game in France, yeah, I could see
Right.
why people could see him potentially being an MVP, of that Olympics because he showed up. He showed up in great fashion against Serbia, keeping them boys in the game as Serbia had gone up big, and of course he closed the door in France right in their face. A shot even
Oh, yeah.
over the outstretched arms of Victor Wembanyama. So I say all that. Team USA definitely did what they were supposed to do, albeit it was a lot closer, and it shows you that the rest of the world is catching up, and it won't be too long before someone ends the streak that Team USA has, and it won't be that surprising. We got some great players coming up, but will it be enough to stave off what's coming with the rest of the world?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of telling that it took, last year in the World Cup, we just didn't have it. And we sent our young guys, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, those guys, and they were just not enough. And we had to call in the old guard to come in and save them. And save them they had to because both games looked a little dicey, especially that Serbia game. I thought 13 down going into fourth quarter, and those guys were playing, all of Serbia was playing well. Jokic was just, I think Jokic getting in foul trouble kind of hurt him because he couldn't do what he wanted to do on the defensive end, and he had to kind of just let guys lay it up, even though that's somewhat of his mantra anyway. But he couldn't be as aggressive as he probably wanted to be. I think that really hurt him down the stretch. And I'll give LeBron some props. He played some pretty good defense on Nikola Jokic towards the end. I mean, he was just roughing him up. Some of those were a little. I mean, they could have called something on him because he was pushing them. He was roughing them up, but luckily everything came to a head, and they were able to defeat Serbia and of course France. And I mean, looking at Steph Curry, that was just insanity, especially that France game. That's last four threes were just, I mean, hands in his face. He was, just dancing around. He would just throw it up, splash. I mean, it was beautiful to say the least. And I'm gonna say this team was not disappointing, but it just seemed weird. It kind of seemed like the 2021 team where they put these guys together. On paper, you're like, okay, they can probably win this, but then they get to the games and it's like they're not really dominating, but they're winning. And it's like one or two guys just really killing the competition, and then everyone else is kind of out there doing their own thing and not really. There's no. When you look at Serbia and you look at France, they look like a well-oiled team together out there. USA looked like the LeBron show for certain points, the KD show, Devin Booker at times, and of course Steph at times. It just looked like different guys would take over at different times. It wasn't as much of a team effort as you could see with other teams out there. And I think that just kind of, for me, that was kind of what hurt watching it for me, it was just we just seemed like we had to win because we had the better players out there on the floor. You have LeBron James, you have Steph Curry, you have Kevin Durant. So you felt the ease of having that you have that in your back pocket. But if one of those guys weren't out there, you didn't feel confident that you would win, especially those last two games. And I think that's kind of telling as we go forward in 2028. And then you have Jason Tatum going on a milk carton missing, thanks to, I guess, and part of that is because of Steve Kerr. And he's going to be kind of your veteran guy going into this next phase. And he didn't get much time. And then, Anthony Edwards showed some, he's got something to give, but wasn't spectacular. Tyrese Halliburton barely played. I don't think we're going to see another Joel Embiid sighting on Team USA. Maybe. I think he just want to get his one gold medal and be out. So it was, they got it done, and congrats to them. It was some exciting games, way closer than I thought most of those games should be. But in the end, they prevailed. And in the end, we got an Olympic MVP. And a lot of people thought it should be one person over the other. And then you look at the consistency of that person. And then you look at just the number and the sheer offensive firepower the other gave. I feel like it was anybody's to win between those two. And consistency usually wins out when it comes to things like that. But I will bring up a question once we get past that. But question we asked earlier on the channel, and we had about 23 people answer. I think 63% said yes. And the question was Steph Curry robbed of an Olympic MVP? So I'm going to let you go and tell us, do you feel like Steph was robbed, or was LeBron's MVP win justified?
I'm not going to vilify anybody for having the opinion that Steph Curry was robbed of an Olympic MVP, right? He showed out in great fashion against not South Sudan, excuse me, Serbia and France. He didn't play very well against South Sudan. But regardless of that, I think the MVP definitely shouldn't be based off of two games. And if we're just speaking in just gold medal play, there's not much an argument, because the way that game was going, had Steph not did the things that he did and kind of put the team on his back in that fourth quarter, where you got someone like Kevin Durant who's unconscious in closeout situations. He's throwing the ball right back to Curry and saying, "This is your time, big dog." Like, all that razzle dazzle, shooting crazy, this is all you, right? If you got somebody like a Kevin Durant deferring to you, you're hotter than fish grease.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, again, I think LeBron should have won it, which he did, of course, because of the consistency, the way that he was that calming force, that decision maker when things are getting rough. When everybody was, like, for example, when Serbia kind of pushed them in that zone, pushed them kind of off the 3-point line, making them shoot. If you're going to shoot, you're going to shoot contested threes with big people in your face, right? And if they're not going in, that means fast break outlets from Jokic, and they're getting buckets. And of course, they couldn't miss from the 3-point line. So it took a LeBron James type of performance to kind of go in there, muck it up inside, put the bigs in foul trouble, kind of put their wings at a disadvantage where they kind of have to collapse on LeBron to now he can swing it to a Booker for a three. He can get Drew Holiday for a three. Like, he can create more open looks and mismatches and attack that kind of defense, because that's where, even though Steph Curry, he played very well, the team wasn't benefiting from him. He kept them in the game, but I don't think his performance was enough to put him over the top. That's when LeBron stepped in. He did his thing. He did his work in that second half, and that's what ultimately led to what I believe them trumping Serbia and getting to that gold medal game. But again, we're talking about consistency. So I think LeBron, he played better throughout the Olympics. But if you want to take the last 3-4 games for the medal play, you could make an argument that Steph outplayed him and could have won the MVP. But again, I think they're taking the totality of the Olympics, and I think that's why LeBron usurped him for that MVP.
Yeah, it just depends. Are you, just like I said, are you talking about the totality of it? Are you talking about the pool play and the medal, tournament aspect of it? If you're saying it from that, if you're taking it from that perspective, obviously it was LeBron James. He was the most consistent. I would say there were nights where other guys would go off, but you look at the numbers and his would be spread over, and pretty much his stats would be where you want. He would put something in almost every stat where other guys maybe go off offensively, and that was pretty much all they gave you. So you look at that, and I guess you could say LeBron. You look at those last two or last three, the tournament actual play, and you're going to say, well, Steph really carried. I won't say he carried, but his offensive efficiency, just the fact that he was able to score so easily, even though it's not easy, if you think about it, if you know basketball, those were not easy shots, but he made them look easy, and his shots were just effortless. It was just like he would get to his spot, get the ball, shoot it, and it was automatic. And when you have somebody like that, especially in Olympic play, you're good to go. And I could argue both sides, because to me, without Steph in those moments, they made bronze. I don't know if they even get to that gold medal game and get a chance to get a gold or silver medal. They might have to play Germany or whoever and try to bronze. And even then, it'd be a tough game, And it just, that's a testament to LeBron. But he's still great at certain things. He's not the guy that can take over the game like he once could. And I think that's why you put guys like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry on that team, because that's somebody a guy like LeBron can defer to, which you need somebody like that for him, because he can't do it all, but he could do a little bit of everything. And I guess that is what you want in your Olympic MVP, is somebody that gets you a little bit and is the Swiss Army knife for your team and gets you the win. Not exactly the points and all of that, but they get you in a position to win. So with that said, Team USA 2024 gets a gold medal. So they continue our tradition. That's 5 gold medals in a row. And listening to different podcasts, different sports media shows and all that, they love to compare. That's all we do now. If someone's doing good in one aspect of the game, you got to compare them to people from the past that did stuff similar, and see and talk about who was better, even though it's hypothetical. We'll never know. Of course, they want to compare this team to the dream team. They want to compare them to the redeemed team and all these other versions of the U.S. Olympic men's teams and put them above. And it's always easy for them to just say, okay, this is the greatest team ever. But you got to put it all together into context. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to do it the GOATcast podcast way, where we're going to do a tier list, and we're going to rank those past teams. We're not going to go beyond 92, because beyond there, only college players can play. So we're going, once they allow pro players to play, we're going to rank those teams. So I'm going to hopefully be able to bring up my screen to share. And let's see. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's about as big as I can get it right now. But
here's Liz, whose bladder leaks drop in uninvited.
Sorry about that. So we're gonna go through each of these teams. I can't see the screen, so I can only see this tier list screen. So if anybody says something, thank you for stopping by, but I can't see any. So BigNige will have to let me know.
I'll let you know.
Okay, so of course, here are our rankings, our tiers. We have the GOAT tier. That's the GOAT medal. Of course, that's the cream of the crop. You're on the GOATcast podcast. You have your silver medal, where you're good, but you're just not the best. And then you have your bronze, where, participation trophy, basically. I think it's easy for us to pick the one that goes in bronze right now. I don't think we have to There's no talk. There's no deep diving. We know which one's going in the bronze easily.
92.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding, of
92.
course.
Yes, of course. But no, we're going to put that 2004 team that stunk it up in the Olympic Games. That team consisted of, and it hurts me because this was the only Olympic team my favorite player, one of my favorite players, played on. That's Tim Duncan. So we're going to go down a list of who played for that team. Tim Duncan, Allen Iverson, a very young LeBron James, a very young Carmelo Anthony, a very young Dwayne Wade, Sean Marion, Lamar Odom, Carlos Boozer, Richard Jefferson, Stephon Marbury, Emeka Okafor, and Mari Stoudemire. You can probably tell why they bronze with that team. That was a very not well put together team, but you got to understand this was, to put in some context, this was not long. This was a couple years after 9/11. So a lot of players were still kind of weary about traveling, especially for a big Olympic event with all these international people coming in and you just not knowing the atmosphere is just kind of crazy with everything going on. We were at war. So you got to understand a lot of people withdrew from this. Of course, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, other players, they withdrew from these games and they finished 5-3 in their pool play and everything together and the tournament play. And their average margin of victory was only 7.5 points per game. So anything to say about that 2004 bronze team?
Nah, I mean, you pretty much hit everything up. Only thing I want to add is that this team could have been a lot better, obviously, with the additions of Kobe and Shaq, but just some roster configurations that could have been better. Like you had some very good players kind of just not getting that much playing time. I wouldn't say like Jason Tatum playing time, but you have players who could contribute, to that level, and they just didn't get that much run. They had some kind of mismatch, wonky lineups that didn't really fit together. So it kind of ended up leading to Allen Iverson kind of putting the team on his back and just kind of scoring at will. But again, if you're going to beat a team, you need to be firing on all cylinders, and they just weren't able to do that.
Absolutely. And yeah, so 2004, you would think the likes of Tim Duncan and Allen Iverson together was a dream come true, but not when you got Manu Ginobili out there with a team that knows how to play together. But moving on, we're going to kind of skip around on which teams we're going to talk about. So our next one is the 2020 team, the last Olympic Games. I know it's probably hard to see the actual image, but I'm going to read off the players for that team as well. Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, Draymond Green, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Bam Adebayo, Zach LaVine, Jeremy Grant, JaVale McGee, and Keldon Johnson. We got a spur on there, so that's good for me. But so their record was 5-1, average margin of victory 19.3 points per game, and they did gold medal that year. So where would you put? So because we got to agree, where would you put the 2020 team? And I'll see if I agree with you.
I would put them in the bronze tier. Like I think when you compare them to the other, but hear me out. When you compare them to the other teams, because we have some really good teams on this list, they don't really stack up with them, right? When you saw the way how they won, they barely won. And I'm not trying to make it a point of emphasis because some teams like the 2024 team, obviously they barely won as well. But I don't think the competition, even though it was improving and there were some good, decent world teams out there, I don't think that roster as constructed was all that special. Like I think Kevin Durant showed why he was special, right? But we saw guys like Damian Lillard, who was probably arguably top 3 on that team. He struggled mightily in that Olympic play. So I don't think that team, when it was clicking, because it never got to really click. It was kind of Kevin Durant, some Bradley Beal moments here and there. Draymond did his thing, but of course, Draymond is just the glue guy. He ain't really doing too much. I don't think they're that good to put them in silver tier, and they did win,
Yeah,
But
I mean,
if
they
you would
brought
have
home
put that team against who we just played this year, they would have got smoked.
I kind of agree, and also Bradley Beal did not play on this team, but I understand what you're saying. They
Wait,
might
Bradley,
like
you
should have
saying
had
Bradley
him.
Beal wasn't on this team?
Who that was that?
You saying Bradley Beal wasn't on this team?
No,
He wasn't on this team? What team? He didn't.
I don't think he was.
Oh, I might be thinking of I think I might be thinking of FIBA.
He
He
might
might
have been on the FIBA World Cup, but
Yeah,
either way, yeah, I kind of agree. They were. It just sounded like a disappointing group of names when you saw it compared to what we got the last couple of years before that, and even this year is looking like that was just not. I mean, when you got Keldon Johnson making the team, it's just like okay, yeah. And yeah, they barely gold medaled, unfortunately, but that speaks to the greatness of Kevin Durant. Devin Booker has been a pretty solid Olympic player so far, and he didn't light it up, but he was consistent, and that's the same thing to say about this year. He wasn't, putting up huge numbers, but he was consistent every game. You could count on him to put up at least maybe 10 points a game. So he was good there. And Jason Tatum was actually their second best player after Kevin Durant, which is surprising seeing him just kind of regulated to DMPs throughout a lot of this Olympic play. But I guess that speaks to, where would you put him? Do you put him alongside LeBron and Steph and those guys? He probably doesn't work with them that great. So I guess that shows what, his value to this 2024 team unfortunately was. But yeah, I mean, they were good enough to get a gold medal. Of course, this is coming off the heels of COVID, so you probably didn't have the show out internationally that you would have had if this was during normal times like now. So they probably benefited from that because, yes, if the competition had been the same back then that it was this year, I don't know if they even get a bronze. So, yeah, so the 2020 team we're going to put in the bronze tier for right now. Let's go to the 2000 team. 2000 team, of course, it's probably hard for you to see this image, but I'm gonna give you all the players. That team consisted of Kevin Garnett, Vince Carter, Jason Kidd, Ray Allen, Alonzo Mourning, Gary Payton, Allen Houston, Steve Smith, Antonio McDyess, Vin Baker, and Sharif Abdul-Rahim. This was a team famous for Vince Carter dunking over what was he, a Lithuanian, somebody, one of those countries. He dunked completely over the guy. So that was what made that 2000 team pretty famous. They went 8-0. They got the gold, and they won by a margin of 21.6 points per game. So where do you think the 2000 team ranks amongst our tiers?
This one is, again, I don't want to go too far and say bronze, but
You gotta give them a little more than bronze.
I'm giving them a little bit more. So I'm gonna say they sit on silver, but they're on the fringe.
They're a low tier silver. I mean, they didn't have. You look at those names, and Alonzo wasn't quite in his prime. He was there kind of, but Gary Payton, Allen Houston was a great player, of course. Sharif Abdul-Rahim, Vin Baker, they were all great, but those guys seem like kind of lower tier stars when you really think about it. So it doesn't look as impressive, but in the end, they got the job done, and they were good. So 2000 team. So let's move on to let's go to the 2016 team. And that's a pretty good team. I'm gonna break down their roster and what they did. They had Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, DeAndre Jordan, Paul George, DeMarcus Cousins, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Harrison Barnes, and DeMar DeRozan. They went undefeated 8-0, and their margin of victory was 22.5 points per game. So, the 2016 team.
I'm going silver. I'm going silver for them. I think because I do remember watching a lot of this Olympics, and I know this is kind of where you could maybe see that there were some ideas that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving could play together. We've seen
Yeah.
when guys get together in the Olympics, it's the ultimate recruitment session.
Yeah.
So I saw how good Kyrie Irving looked. I saw how good Kevin Durant looked. You already know Carmelo was an Olympic like no other. And I like the versatility of this roster. Like they can play small and they can play big. Maybe they can't quite do it as well as some of these other teams on this list, but I think this is one of those one of the first iterations of Team USA that can go big and small and beat you in both ways convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, this is a solid look at those players. That's a beast of a defensive team. If you break it down, you got Clay, Draymond, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, for that matter. This was a solid team, and you had gunners with Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, and Kyrie. So they had defense and offense in spades. So I think that, yeah, I could see. I say a high silver. They were a solid team. They could probably give any of these other teams fits if you really think about it. I mean, they're not going to be world beaters, and they weren't world beaters, but they were good enough to gold, of course. And that roster is solid. I don't see a true weak link on that on that roster to really bring it down any further. I mean, Harrison Barnes maybe, but he was, I think that was that Warriors? That might not have been Warriors. I think that was after Warriors, Harrison Barnes. But Sacramento King Barnes was still solid. So I think that was a pretty good team. I would say high silver. Not quite GOAT. We haven't got there yet, but we'll get there soon. And we might get there now. We're going into the 90s. We're going with that 1996 Dream Team 2 that consisted of Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Scottie Pippen, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, Reggie Miller, John Stockton, Gary Payton, Grant Hill, Mitch Richmond, and Penny Hardaway. They were 8-0, average margin of victory, 32.3 points per game. Could we have our first GOAT team? Because you look at that team, that's a stacked team.
Yeah, I think even though I think they're maybe on the lower tier of GOAT, maybe not as low as another team that I might have up there, but I will give them the GOAT nod because you got that combination of players. You got Shaquille O'Neal doing what he's going to do. We saw what Charles Barkley has been doing. That's with or without MJ on that roster. So now I think that team's shown plenty enough that they're in the GOAT tier.
Just look at that. Those big men. You have David Robinson, Hakeem, and Shaq on one team.
I don't know how they were going to do against a fast-paced team, but this is definitely a team that could beat you.
Yeah,
they weren't the old school traditional way. This team would dominate. I just don't know how they would feel against a team, a 5-out setting. Everybody can put the ball on the floor, shoot the ball efficiently. Like it would be interesting to see them against like a team like France, even though we know that's barbecue chicken for Shaq. He's still got to go out there and guard somebody like Wemby, who's doing guard-like moves at 7'4". So that'd be a good matchup.
Yeah, they could be quick if you put, Grant Hill, Penny out there. You can throw in Scotty, Barkley, and go small, and maybe David Robinson. They can get up and down the court. So I think they would do well even in today's setting. The 3-point shot is just where they would probably get killed. Reggie Miller's your only real top-notch shooter, Mitch Richmond to a certain degree, and that's about it. So they would try to beat you up. They would probably be. I mean, for FIBA, that's a stacked team because they can be more physical, and that was a physical team, especially with Shaq down there. So I agree, GOAT status for the 96 team, and let's go to the 2012 team, which consisted of, if I can pull them up real quick. They consisted of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kobe Bryant, making his last appearance, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Kevin Love, Tyson Chandler, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Darren Williams, Andre Iguodala, and Anthony Davis, a very young Anthony Davis. They went 8-0. Margin of victory was 32.1 points per game. Of course, they won gold that year. So where would you put the 2012 team? That was a solid team as well.
That's GOAT. That's GOAT status. And I mean, like the dominance they
So
showed.
there's no question. There's
No question. No question whatsoever.
question.
No question whatsoever. That team, I got to see every dribble of that team. And again,
Yeah.
the versatility of that team speaks volumes. They can play big and they can play small. Obviously, they don't have a true big like maybe the 96 team. You know, they have Dave Robinson, Shaq, et cetera, et cetera. They don't got like a true guy.
You got Tyson Chandler. That's about it.
Tyson
AD.
Chandler can do his thing. We see a young Anthony Davis who can kind of dabble in playing a small ball big or playing the power forward. You know, Kevin Love, I don't consider him a big, but for this generation, he's a big.
Yeah.
So, and you have LeBron, Kevin Durant, a much younger LeBron and Kevin Durant, a younger Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, they're not super young, but they're definitely in the primes of their careers. So they can be a lot more mobile on both ends of the floor. And then you got Chris Paul, even to a lesser extent, you got Darren Williams, right? And I know he's not, nothing to scoff at in terms of his career, but at that point in his career,
yeah,
he was just as good as any guard in the league. And he was liable to put people on the floor if they didn't come with their right shoes on. So I say all that team was stupidly dominant. And the only thing that could hold them back, which is like another team that I'm going to allude to, competition wasn't all that. It wasn't the worst, like another team on this list, but it wasn't that great to really challenge them. I mean, if your average margin of victory is 32, I mean, are you really getting tested? Like, are you really yes, you are dominant, but are you really getting tested to show just how good of a team you are?
You put the best combination together, and that's just what you get. They just dominate. You put the right squad out there, you dominate.
But we can agree that the 2024 team probably faced the best accumulation of talent in the Olympics play. I think we can both agree with that.
I can partially agree with that.
Partially?
I partially agree with that.
What team would have faced more challenges than 2024?
Those Manu Ginobili teams were solid.
But that's only one team.
Spain?
I mean, they were respectable.
I mean,
Brazil was probably solid too, but none of those teams were as good as
Argentina. Of course, that was his team. Spain was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Yeah, this year it just seemed like there was a little more parity between the teams. It wasn't as much of a gap between the better teams and the other teams, especially once they got to the pool play. So I'll agree with that. 2024 was a solid, definitely a very good men's Olympic basketball tournament. I'll say that.
Okay. That's all I want to say.
So 2012 GOAT status. Let's go to the Redeem team because I'm gonna save the best for last. Redeem team, of course, had to redeem the U.S. after the abomination that was that 2014. So they got the troops together, came together, and got another gold medal. So that team consisted of Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, a much more established LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, another more established Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, Chris Bosh, Jason Kidd, Darren Williams, Michael Redd, Tayshaun Prince, and Carlos Boozer. They were 8-0, average margin of victory, 27.9 points per game. So I don't think it's really a question where they're going. It's where do you put them, stack them against these other teams, the 2012 and the 96 team. Do you put them ahead of them? Should they be at the tail end of GOAT? What do you think?
Redeem team, they just had a different air to them. It's tough because I think their bench is kind of what kills them. I just don't like. Obviously, you have a nasty starting five. Whatever you want to throw with Chris Paul, Kobe, LeBron, Carmelo. You got Bosh or Howard, whoever you want to throw out there. And, D Wade came off the bench. But outside of that, I mean, Jason Kidd, obviously not disrespecting the greatness of Jason Kidd. Derrick Williams was on that team as well, but again, he wasn't that much of a difference.
I was young during Darren Williams.
He was very young. Michael Redd, solid scorer. Again, we're kind of splitting hairs here, but when you talk about the bench, you got Tayshaun Prince, a defensive dynamo, and Carlos Boozer, obviously very young.
Yeah.
I think the bench is what kind of hurts them for making them maybe go higher than where they are now. Because I think 2012, even though their bench isn't super great, I would prefer their bench over the Redeem team. I'm not going to be mad if you put the Redeem team over the 2012 team, but I'm kind of like stuck in the middle. But if you put them over 2012, I won't be mad, but I would personally put 2012 over the Redeem team.
The Redeem team has some great talent, and these guys kind of entering in. Some of these guys entering into their primes, especially like Dwight Howard, lesser extent Bosh. Of course, LeBron James was there. He was a year removed from making it to the finals against the Spurs, and of course, D Wade was not long removed from being a Finals MVP. So that was a really good team. If they went against the 2012 team,
be careful. Be careful now. Be careful what you're about to say now. Be careful.
I mean, the only huge difference is you had Kevin Durant and you had probably LeBron closer to his prime. So 2012 LeBron's slightly different than 2008 LeBron. I wouldn't say slightly. He was different than.
He was way different. That was a way different LeBron in 2012. He wasn't holding nothing back.
I must think on it, but I would say 2008 because of how good Kobe was, and having a Dwight Howard that was peaking, going into his peak. I want to pick them. Your bench, talking about the bench, I think their bench is a little weaker. 2008's Michael Redd, he's a Bucks legend, if you want to call him that, but all he was good for was getting you a couple buckets. And Jason Kidd at that time wasn't quite the Jason Kidd we knew and loved. He was, not quite at the twilight of his career, but he was on the decline a little bit. He wasn't quite the impactful player he once was. So I'm gonna keep it like it is. I'm gonna keep 2012 there, but I really think the Redeem team would give 2012 fits. And the only thing that's keeping me from doing that is because of the vast difference between 2008 LeBron and 2012 LeBron. So that's the only thing, and them having KD. But I think Redeem team Kobe would lock down KD. But that's just me. So let's go to a team that's near and dear to most of us old geezers, as we like to call us, the 1992 Dream Team, which if you weren't there, you don't understand how impactful that team was. You couldn't turn a channel where you didn't see something with their likeness on it. It was a global phenomenon. McDonald's, I'm sure if you were growing up that time, you go get a Happy Meal so you get one of their cards. And it was very hard to get Michael Jordan's card. I got it, but I don't know where it's at right now. But let's talk about the Dream Team roster. It consists of Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, Scottie Pippen, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, John Stockton, Clyde Drexler, Chris Mullin, and Christian Laettner. They went 8-0. This was the first time pros could play in the Olympic Games, of course. They won by an average margin of 43.8 points per game. And, of course, they had zero trouble winning the gold medal. So I think we know where this team is going to go. But where we position them is what might be the hot topic. I'm going to put them at the head of the snake. They are the best team out of these currently on this list, I think. I will get your opinion.
So I understand why you think they're the head of the snake, and I partially agree, but the only difficulty I'm having is the fact that they really didn't play anybody. Like anybody that could even touch the ground that they were walking on. Like when we talk about how dominant they were, we also have to take into consideration the level of competition, or I should say lack thereof, that they faced. And I mean, I know you have to play who's in front of you, and you can't really vilify them too much, which is why I'm not debating that they're GOAT tier. For sure they're GOAT tier. This list of names you mentioned, Magic, Bird, even though they were definitely older, but they still can do things at a very high level that most normal people couldn't do, especially at that age. And of course, they had Michael Jordan. Not much to say after that, but obviously you got Barkley, Malone, Pippen, Ewing, Robinson, etc., etc. You get the picture. I'm just not sure because they played virtually nobody, and then you have the 2024 team who played the toughest. So it's like I would think both of those teams are GOAT tier teams, but where you rank them kind of depends on how you value competition. The dream team, they played virtually nobody and smacked them by 40 plus. Then you have the 2024 team who played a lot of tougher teams with a lot of the parity kind of going to the world side. You have more NBA caliber players out there that you're going up against who've played together for numerous years. It's hard, man. This is hard. But I would lean because they're not a good match for some of these teams. Like this is a separate topic, but breaking them down roster by roster, how they match up against one another, the versatility of this team's a little scary because you have a lot of bigs and not a lot of like switchable wings outside of MJ and Pippen. That's really all you have who can kind of do work on the perimeter and switch off to guard just about anybody. But the only thing that could have made this argument sound complete, like stamp it and book it, is if you remove Leitner and add Shaquille O'Neal. You do that, I have no argument that they're the greatest team to ever be assembled. But
that's
there is
always,
that,
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm saying that's always been the argument is the inclusion of Christian Leitner kind of hurt their the best assembled team of all time because you had Shaq out there.
Christian Leitner and Bird are old too. Like they're old.
Magic was, and see that's the common misconception. Magic wasn't old. He was 33, so he wasn't old.
They'd like it.
I mean, he hadn't played a season. I mean, that's when he got HIV. He had to sit out. He had to essentially retire because of that. So he didn't play that whole 92 season. He just played in the Olympics. So, yeah, he was a little rusty, but he was still solid for somebody that didn't play, hardly any professional basketball for that whole duration. And, of course, Bird was a shell of himself. His back was pretty much gone. He retired not long after that. So you take those, even if you take those two out, even if you add, an Isaiah Thomas and a Dominique Wilkins, to me, that's still the best assembled team of all time. Even with the Christian Leitner asterisks, I still put them as that. I think they're the GOAT team, and it's probably just nostalgia talking, but just what they had, and they played some NBA levels, Drazen Petrovic, Dino Raja.
Come on now, stop. Don't even.
Tony don't disrespect Drazen Petrovic.
Come on,
RIP.
Man. He
had his career cut short, but Drazen Petrovic,
come on, bro,
actually ate them up.
He have no team with him though. He could have a player or two, but they ain't have no team. Like the 2024 team played against actual teams, like you said, well-oiled machines.
But those teams
they had to go through.
But those teams had been together. Like US hadn't let the pros play together. Those guys were able to play together a lot. So those teams did have chemistry. They just weren't NBA style player or NBA.
I've seen a clip of them playing against somebody. I think it was Angola or something. bro. Them boys were
They
probably
killed
like,
Angola.
I mean, them boys are probably all 6', 6'3", and they were just getting ragdolled by them.
There has been an evolution. I don't
Smoking
think
layups left and right. Like, come on now.
I don't
Come on
think
now. I know you've seen the clip. You know
I don't
exactly what
think
I'm talking about.
I don't think you could time skip Dream Team to now, and they would just it wouldn't be an average of 43.8 points per game. We all know that. Anybody that knows basketball knows they're not beating teams like that currently. They're not beating France or Serbia or any of those teams, Germany. None of those teams by that margin. But they still look. When I was watching the 2024 team, I said if that was in the way certain teams were carving them up, I'm saying if that was Mike and Scotty, those guys wouldn't get past half court. And that's the kind of defense they had from those two. They had superior wing defense. And I think having that against a team like Canada, who doesn't have any real bigs, against a team like Germany, I think they wouldn't have beaten them by 30, 40 points, but they would have not struggled like maybe US would or had. That's just how I feel about that. But I think they're easily right now of the teams we have up there, they are the greatest team assembled from this list. But we got one more team. And I can probably name the team off top. I'm sure if you're watching, you know what the 2024 team consists of. But of course, you have LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum. I don't know if I missed anybody. Embiid, yeah, he was forgettable, but Embiid. And they, of course, went 8-0. They were victorious. I don't have their margin of victory. It wasn't close to any of those big ones like we had, but they still got the job done. They gold medal. So I'm going to let you go first. Where are you putting the 2024 Team USA?
So all the stuff I said about the Dream Team and the lack of competition, obviously, like I said, the 24 team played probably the best competition. But what hurts this team the most is coaching. And we know, as you know, Steve Kerr and his inability to coach, even though he had Eric Spoelstra on that bench and Ty Lue, all those guys are brilliant in their own rights. But if your spearhead is Steve Kerr, if he's the deciding factor, because I guarantee you, if it was Spoelstra or Ty Lue, there's no way that they don't allow Jason Tatum, coming off of an NBA Finals run in a championship, to just get no playing time. Like, it just blows my mind. So I already know they're walking into any matchup against any of these teams with a disadvantage in the coaching department. That being said, I still believe they are a GOAT tier, especially when you have the combination of Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, LeBron James. Obviously, they're GOAT tier. And the level of competition that they played. Now, where we put them, that's a different conversation when you factor in that they're having easily the worst coach out of all these teams. For me, man, that's rough, man. I mean, because obviously you can make an argument that the 24 team can beat any of these teams in their own way, whether you talk about different eras or whatever. They can kind of play the big way when you got Embiid. You can throw Anthony Davis out there as well. Granted, are they strong enough physically to match up with some of these big squatted teams like the 96, 92? No, probably not. Like, Embiid's their best weapon at the 5 spot, and he's probably going to get ragdolled to a lesser extent than some of the other bigs on that roster. Bam, I love his versatility. He ain't stopping no David Robinson. He's just giving up too much, So, they got Ewing, Robinson. Like, they got just too many, like, legitimate bigs. But to 24's credit, if they play a fast pace, those bigs aren't going to be able to get up and down with them. Can they run? Of course. We're not disputing the condition of the bigs from the past, but the versatility that the current bigs offer that the previous bigs could not, that would be definitely a deciding factor. Not the deciding factor, but a deciding factor. Obviously, you have the greatest shooter ever in Steph Curry. He can shoot you into some games and he can shoot you out of some games. And when you have, defensive versatility of the 92 Dream Team, be kind of scary for a guy like Steph. Could he still get his shots off? Absolutely. I don't think anyone's going to hold him to nothing, but will they make him work and struggle? You can make a good argument. So I think the 24 team, I'm only putting them probably at number. I'd put them at number. Dang, it's tough because
about all you said. Think about all you just said.
It's just the competition. You have to factor that into how they played. But if we're talking about Team USA's dominance, I'm gonna have to say that they're.
Before you do that, let me ask you one question, because you kind of answered it. But had Team USA 2024, the 2024 iteration, had a different coach, would those games have looked different?
I believe so. I believe they would have looked different because I think they would have played a different style of basketball that wouldn't played into the hands of some of the other teams that they played.
So you think with that roster, a coach could make them better than what was shown throughout these Olympic Games?
Absolutely, for sure.
So their ceiling is still high. What we saw was the base, and they didn't get to what that team really could have been.
What we saw was a combination of Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Steph Curry. Obviously, they had other great pieces. Devin Booker played his role, and Drew Holiday came in, did his thing. Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, they all contributed. But when you're asking what adjustments are made, you can clearly tell that there's a discrepancy between what's communicated coaching-wise and what the players are doing on the floor. And that's obviously in large part from their veteran players. So you could leave them where they are because even at the end of the day, they're still GOAT tier. You still give them their respect. But I'm only going to leave them there because any of those teams in the GOAT tier teams can compete with each other. And you can go back and forth all day, all night on who would win based on your preference and what you feel could give certain teams the advantage over the other. But I think they're okay right there. And you can debate who wins what any day at any point.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't feel just putting them over any of these other teams right now. Maybe hindsight being a little more 2020, it'll change my vision. It'll change my thoughts. But right now, I would put them. I think they were GOAT, but I don't think they were better. What we saw and all we can judge by is what we saw, not what their potential was. What we saw is them scraping to that gold medal. Now, as you said, the competition is better, more parity. Teams aren't scared of the U.S. like they once were. So you can factor that in. But I just think Kerr didn't strategize well enough for me to put this team at a better position because to me, when they were 40, 20, 15-point favorites and games would come down to the last 2-3 minutes, that's just them not putting together the right combinations and the right styles to play together. And I think that's what we saw there. And then because of the personnel they brought there, they had guys that could bail them out. You had a LeBron who could bail you out, a Steph, a KD. When you have long lulls of just not playing well, you had players in position. And this is why I think they needed Kawhi Leonard, because he's another guy that, when healthy, can be automatic. And you needed those type of guys. I've said this many times. You need the Kobe's, the Kawhis, the Carmelo Anthony's of the world out there because you need guys that can just get a bucket when necessary. And we saw that with Steph, and we saw that at times with KD, that they could just get buckets just, doing their little isolation stuff. But I think with the right coach, this team would have been much more than what we saw out there. And I think that really will probably hurt their legacy because games were so close and because even if you want to factor in the world getting better, we had a team of nothing but NBA players, nothing but NBA All-Stars. So that has to amount to something. You just can't let teams that have 2-3 NBA players be up for nearly 3/4, and then you have to figure it out in short order how to win a game. I think that's what hurts 2024. That's why I think, like you said, they're on the lower end of the GOAT tier as far as our tier system. So there you have it. For the GOAT tier, we have the 92 Dream Team, the 96 Dream Team 2, 2012 Team USA, the 2008 Redeem Team, the 2024 Team USA. They're all in the GOAT status. The silver medal for 2016 Team USA, 2000 Team USA, and of course bronze, teams that just weren't built to to really do much. The 2020 Team USA and the 2004 Team USA, the bronze team. So that is our. Let me see if I can get back. That was our tier list. Okay, so I'm back. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. If you agreed, disagreed, let us know in the comment section. I'm sure you will. And is there anything else you got, BigNige? I think you said you had a question. You might have already asked it, but
I'll leave you guys with this question. What was your biggest takeaway from Olympic basketball? Not only what you have, that we just had in 2024, but just what did you take away from the Olympics? Did it show you that Team USA, throw some old geezers out there, they can still get the job done with the versatility and the shot making ability that they have? Or do you think the world's going to catch up and they're going to usurp them? Right? You got France knocking at the door. You got Serbia. There's Australia with Josh Giddey and how strong he looked, and
yeah,
of course there's Greece with Giannis, and I'm sure there's more people coming along in Greece. Slovenia with Luka Doncic, because he's obviously one of the best in the NBA. So can he bring his team and potentially upset Team USA? Brazil, like, it's just so many different teams that you can possibly think of.
Mm-hmm.
Has the world finally caught up to Team USA, where it might not be a cakewalk for us, and it might not be ours to lose no more?
Yeah. And you heard what Wemby said. He said, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but basically, be scared, because this is probably the worst you're going to see him play in these Olympic Games. So, and he was no slouch. He led his whole France team in just about every statistic possible. So, yeah, there's a lot of young talent. And I was listening to Gil and them, and you got to think, Team France has Alex Sarr and the number one pick guy. They've got those young guys coming in for the next 2028 season. So Team USA better get it together, because you might not be able to call on Bron and Captain America and Steph Curry and KD, because I think their ship has sailed, and this is probably their swan song as far as the Olympic Games go. So with that said, once again, we thank you guys for the 100 subs. We really, this is something we do out of the love for the game. So it's just a labor of love, and you guys showing love to us helps us to keep this thing going. And that's what we're going to try to do. We want to make sure we try to get out every Tuesday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and get you guys more content. So if there's anything you want us to discuss, or any topic you guys want, or any video or clip or whatever you want us to react to, please let us know in the comment section, and we'll definitely try to get to that. And hopefully BigNige will grace us with his basketball IQ this week at some point, and we can get that out to you guys so he can let you know some of his wild and crazy opinions. So with that said, any parting words, BigNige?
Stay tuned for my video. Going to be a segment called Basketball with BigNige, and you'll have to stay tuned for the topic at hand. But other than that, appreciate you guys' support. Keep rocking with us. We'll keep pumping out this good content for you guys. And until next time.
Yep. So we'll be back next Tuesday. Of course, hopefully BigNige will see you a little bit earlier in the week. So we'll see you again. And thank you guys once again. And we will be back soon.